Hello, and today the Writer's Mind welcomes Anne Block. Anne Block is a very interesting person. Anne is a professional tour guide. And I don't know about you other writers out there, but a nice character would be a professional tour guide. I can imagine all kinds of mayhem happening to a professional tour guide. But she's not just a tour guide. She is also getting ready to write her memoir, which is tentatively titled Travels with My Wendy, Two Lesbians on the Loose. Well, I can't wait to hear about that. And then she also just finished taking a writing class in Tuscany. Now, why you have to go all the way to Tuscany to take a writing class, we're going to find out. So, the first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to say hello, welcome in to the Writer's
Thank
Mind.
you. Good morning.
Good morning. So, how does one become a professional tour guide?
Basically, this one just decided to. I'd been traveling with my Wendy for a number of years, and I started offering my services when we lived in San Francisco as a kind of favor to my panic stricken friends who were having their company coming to visit and had no idea what to do. And I always seemed to know what was happening in town.
Well, yeah, but you did not like grow up as a little girl and say, when I get big, I want to be a tour guide.
No.
So how do you get from, girl in
From
your
Wynne,
20s?
Arkansas.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I grew up in a little farming town in Arkansas. I didn't have any, I didn't even know there was a travel industry, of course. But my grandmother kind of set the stage for travels in my family. When Route 66 opened in 1930, she took my dad and his little brother and her mother and set off all by herself to travel from Arkansas to the far west, to what were then known as the Indian Territories. And of course, my dad and his brother never forgot that trip. The pancake breakfast that they were forced to have so they could last through the day. And that spirit of my grandmother has continued throughout my entire family. My parents traveled widely. They took us with them sometimes and sometimes not. My brother was in the Peace Corps in the 60s and is a Latin American history scholar now. And I just got the bug from an early age.
Oh, well, that sounds fascinating. And so just really in your 20s and in your 30s, you were just traveling?
In my, yes, in my 20s, I was in school. I got a degree in anthropology and elementary education, which is a very good combination, but I never worked in a classroom. Kind of too scared to be left alone with 30 kids. Uh, really, I had this concern that I would have favorites in the class, and it just didn't sit right with me. I thought, well, how can I be good to some and not good to others? So I did other things instead. And one thing led to another. I moved to San Francisco just to visit a college friend of mine, and I stayed. And when I was 30, I met Wendy, and she had traveled quite widely in Europe and in India and Japan with her family. And in 1984, we took our first trip to Europe, my first trip to Europe together, and it just completely blew open the world to me.
And Wendy had gone before?
Yes, several times.
Okay, so she was your tour guide.
She was. She
Oh,
was. But it was great to have this new adventure together. We went places she knew and places she didn't, and it just started our adventures together.
oh, I mean, it sounds beautiful. I mean, this is really, your memoir is really going to be a love story, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is, especially now because Wendy has dementia. And so when I'm writing, and I have to say, I have already started my book. I was writing a chapter this morning about a time when we had to sleep on the beach in Crete. And we met a nice German boy who was kind of our guardian. And anyway, I was thinking how now I can't talk to Wendy about that. Now I can't get her memory of that trip from her. So I'm just having to do my best to evoke the spirit of Wendy as we made our way across Europe in 1984. And it's really kind of sweet and sad and exciting all at the same time.
Yeah, Alzheimer is probably one of the most evil diseases out there. So
For sure.
my sympathy with what you're going through.
Thank you.
So let's talk about being a
Hmm.
tour guide.
Okay.
So when you go on tours, you have a minimum amount of people that you take on a tour.
Well, I have two kinds of tours that I do. I do tours here in LA and around the United States. And those tours can be for from 1 to 50 people or so. But when I take a trip to Europe, I always take a small group, kind of like a dinner party. So the group size of my European trips would be 8 to 10 at the most. I will be leading a trip to the Venice Art Biennale in Italy this November, and I have 8 people on that trip, and we're going to have a great week in Venice.
Well, it sounds like a lot of fun. When you take people on a tour, do you have the itinerary already built out, the hotels to go to, the places you're going to eat? All of that is taken care of ahead of time?
Yes, yes. When I go on a European tour, all of that is taken care of. When I do a tour for people who come to visit here in LA, I customize it to fit the client. So, in other words, whatever they're interested in doing, we do. And then I throw in the things that they don't even know are here as we travel along the way. And that's really I have to say, that's my gift.
So, like, if I wanted to do a Walt Disney tour, you could take me to the original house or think places like that, or
Certainly.
places
And
where movies were filmed and things
uh
like
huh,
that.
I could do that. And I could also take you inside Walt Disney Concert Hall because I've been a docent at the Music Center for more than 20 years and I kind of know all the secret places.
Well, that would be a fun tour all by itself.
Thank you. Yeah. The reason I started my tour business actually is because when Wendy and I moved from San Francisco to LA, we moved here because of the movie business. She was working behind the camera, I was working in front of the camera, and we had made friends some years past with Lily Tomlin when she came to San Francisco and did really the first celebrity benefit for the AIDS epidemic. So we got to be really close with Lily and Jane. And after we moved here, Lily told me that she'd been invited to the Berlin Film Festival. And I had been in the film festival in a couple of movies myself and had been there a couple of times. And then once, just right after the wall came down, and was so excited for her. She said, "Well, I don't think I'm really going to go." And Wendy and I said, "What? It is the most exciting city in Europe right now with the wall down." And she said, "Well, but I'm afraid I'll get stuck at the festival and I won't get to really see Berlin." And I said, "Well, I'm making you a list right now." And she said, "No, if you come with me, I'll go." So that was my first hired gig as a tour.
Wow. Now I have to circle back though and find out, what did you and Wendy do in the industry?
Oh, I was an actor. Wendy was a script supervisor, so she worked between the cinematographer and the director and made notes. So every day her notes went to the editing room, and that's actually how a movie gets made. The editing can't be done without the script supervisor's notes and timings and comments. So she had a very detail oriented job, which was perfect for a Virgo. And when she when she herself felt she was slipping at the end of the day with tallying up all the timings, I thought she was just as usual being too modest, but she knew something was going on. And so about a year later, it was true. She had the early stages of a kind of dementia called frontal lobe dementia. So she doesn't have Alzheimer's, which is the good news because Alzheimer's kills you. But she does have frontal lobe, which has now deprived her of speech and just her living in her own little world. She's still in there. She still knows me, but she no longer can talk about things.
I understand.
But
Uh,
anyway,
so,
back to Berlin.
well, okay, go ahead, Berlin.
So when I went to Berlin with Lily and Jane, the first thing that happened is I made a connection with somebody who was German, who could provide the transportation, who could drop everything and just take us, and with my help, show us the most fabulous time in Berlin, not necessarily connected with the film festival. So I discovered really that I have a kind of knack for making these things happen. And when I got home, Wendy said, "Listen, you have a skill. There are thousands of people, like movie executives, people who work 90 hours a week in this town, and they're always having company. So why don't you market your skill as a tour guide and kind of reveal the things about the city that people really want to know? Not just the famous things, but the kind of under the radar things, which is what I specialize in, to tell you the truth."
So when you
And that's
say,
what I did.
well, what would you consider to be under the radar?
Well, I would consider under the radar a private gallery, somebody's house, the Watts Towers. It's like the Statue of Liberty for a New Yorker. How many people do you know in LA who've never been to the Watts Towers? There are, hello,
Hello.
I see a tour in our future. So people want to explore a city and be with a local who can show them, oh, their favorite out of the way coffee shop. When is the last time you were at Clifton's Cafeteria, which is now known as Clifton's Cabinet of Curiosities, which it is. I love revealing the beauty and the kind of splendor of downtown, which, as you know, is having a whole resurgence of life. But the old and the new exist together.
So how do people want to when you become a tour guide,
Uh
how do
huh.
you decide what those little secret places are going to be?
Well, really, I take my cues from the guest. As I said, I personalize each tour. So no two tours are the same. They're really designed one on one, tailored to the guest. So let's say we're driving down Wilshire Boulevard to do an Art Deco tour. And suddenly we pass the beautiful street lamps, that art installation at LACMA. But directly across the street from there, did you know that there's a huge section of the original Berlin Wall?
No, I had no
Yes,
idea.
exactly. And it was
Wow.
given to the city of LA. And by the way, we're sister cities with Berlin. We became sister cities in 1967. So it's our anniversary.
Oh.
But anyway, there's this big hunk of the Berlin Wall. And then we pass the La Brea Tar Pits. Well, some people know what that is, but very few do. And they are always really surprised and thrilled by what's there, because most people don't realize that LA got to be a big city because of the oil industry, not because of the movie industry. So by the time the movies got here, the oil industry was booming and this city was growing by leaps and bounds. And um, so all of these things kind of combine to give people a really full and rich experience and understanding of our big old city. And I love doing that.
Well, now I imagine that doing tours, going to Europe, and even going,
Uh-huh.
taking LA tours, that things get a little unpredictable.
They do.
Do you have any fun stories about when things didn't necessarily go as smoothly as they were supposed to?
Well, yes.
No
I have
names.
kind of a sad story and kind of a fun and happy story. Which one do you want?
Well, let's go with the sad story first and then the funny
Okay.
story.
I was leading a trip to Paris for a group of ladies to do some pre Christmas shopping and just kind of have the experience of the city itself. One of the things I specialize in when I take people to a new place is to go to a different neighborhood every day so they get a big overview and not just the center of town.
Right.
So one night we went to a very unusual restaurant called Le Deux Magots, which is not only the name of what they call the slang for newspaper, but it's the two ducks. And long story short, at the end of the meal, we stood outside and she just let me have it. She said, I told you I wanted to go to such and such kind of place, and this seems so ordinary to me, and I'm very dissatisfied. And I was so shocked, and everybody else was too, because we'd had a wonderful time. Well, as it turns out, this particular lady had only been a widow for about a month.
Oh.
She had decided to stop smoking on this trip. And really, despite the fact that I didn't know exactly what to do, she was clearly dealing with some things. But as a tour guide, it's my job to make sure that people have an experience or get along or, come together. And these were six women who didn't know each other well. And I saw the danger that was at hand. And everyone else was kind of taken aback too, like, oh no, is this going to be a problem? So I called my mentor in Los Angeles, Barbara Deutsch, and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And she said, well, I do. You have to sit alone with this person and just let her talk, just let her vent, and don't say anything. Let her go and say everything she has on her mind and then see what happens. So that's what I did. And it was harsh and she was mad. And as the longer we talked, the more it came out how sad she was and how much she missed her husband and how she'd always planned to do this trip with him.
Oh.
And at the same time, my own father had died recently. And so suddenly we had this connection of loss and sadness. And we just turned it around together. It was really wonderful. Everybody was so relieved. We had a great time. She felt heard and understood. And I'm not sure she started smoking again, but I hope she did because I think that was a terrible loss too.
Oh. So, and the funny one?
Oh, the funny one was a couple of years ago, I lead this trip to the Art Biennale in Venice, Italy, every other year, which is when it takes place on the odd numbered years. So we had this wonderful day, morning, and then beautiful lunch outdoors. The weather was magnificent in November. And you have to take one of the boats from Venice over to the island of Murano. And so after that, we were going to go on another little quick boat trip to the island of Burano. And we took the wrong boat, and it was my fault. And so we ended up going the long way around, and we got to Burano, and we had a dinner engagement. So we needed to just turn around and come back. And there was an enormous line at the boat dock, like hundreds. And one of my very smart people said, listen, let's just hire us a boat. And that's what we did. And we had the time of our lives getting home in our own launch. I think there were 8 of us, and we were singing, and we felt so smart. And we got back in plenty of time for our dinner date. And it was just one of those happenings that seems like it's going to be disastrous and turns out to be more fun than it would have been with my plan. So
So
that's
just
that's the
Providence.
story. Yeah,
Huh,
yeah.
that sounds great. All right. Well, I want to move on now. I want to talk a little bit about what it is you do. One of the things you do in terms of writing is you release a newsletter.
I do.
How?
Now, I have to confess that I'm not a monthly newsletter person, but my web designer is on me about being more, how do you say, proactive. And I've recently written a blog that's about my summer of loving LA. You know, it's the 50th anniversary of the Summer of Love in California, especially in you too?
I was a kid. I was in the summer of LA, 67.
Yep,
Yeah,
'67.
I was only 8.
Well, I was not quite old enough myself to really take part in it, but you know, there was a wonderful documentary made about the music festival in Monterey, which is called Monterey Pop.
Sure.
It was made by a very famous documentarian named B.A. Pennebaker, or maybe it's D.A. But anyway, they had a screening recently at the Cine family on Fairfax Avenue of the 50th anniversary, and he came with one of his cinematographers. So we not only got to see the movie, but we got to hear about the making of the movie from the makers of the movie. And it just really got me going about how much I love where I live and how much there is to love about LA. And so I'm devoting myself to this summer of loving LA by discovering new places, showing old places. Um, Yesterday, I was passing by a local city park, and it's called Queen Anne's Recreational Center. And underneath the banner, I mean, on the banner underneath, it said, summer camp, whatever. So I decided to take that as my theme. The summer of loving LA, camp, whatever.
So when you write, though, how do you do it? Do you have a set time during the day when you want to
In the
write your
morning,
blog?
oh, I write my blog with the help of my wonderful friend who's a great editor and writer herself. And her name is Julie Logan. And so Julie and I get together, we brainstorm. She kind of writes out the skeleton, and then we edit it. And then I find a photograph to go with it. And then I send it to my web designer, Bolin High, and he puts it out. And so that's how I do my blogs. I get a little help and inspiration from talking with people I love to collaborate with.
Okay, well, I actually think Julie Logan is going to be a guest on this podcast sometime in the
Oh,
future.
you're going to love her.
So looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Um, so then you went and you did I know you're getting ready to, as you say, you've even started writing your memoir,
I
but you
have.
took
Yeah,
a class in Tuscany,
I did.
which is my first question is why do you have to go all the way to Tuscany to take a class? And was it in Italian? Was it in English? What did you
Okay.
learn? What was your experience?
The name of this class or this week long workshop was called Topography of Memory. So it suited my notion of writing my memoir perfectly. And also, it's taught in English by two Americans, one of whom is a writer herself, and the other one is an artist. And they're a couple who've been leading this kind of trip to this particular place in Italy for about 6 years. And I went because Tanya Katan, who's the writer, had led a workshop that I was in many years ago. This is a little bit more history when I had breast cancer and I was recovering from breast cancer. And she led a 1 day writing workshop. And she was so funny and so exciting to just hang around with. And when I heard that she and her girlfriend, Angela, I'm sorry, Ellsworthy is her last name. Angela Ellsworthy and Tanya Katan were leading this workshop on memory and memoir. I thought, well, this was almost a year out. I have to do it. And so I applied. You know, they didn't just accept me. I applied and I passed muster, and I was chosen as one of the participants. So there were six of us. We stayed in a villa on an organic farm. The villa is several hundred years old, and the farm has been in this family's existence for several hundred years. It's called Spennocchio, which is the original owner, and it includes forest and meadows and cows and chickens and pigs and eggs and everything grown organically. And so we stayed there for a week, and the cooks were wonderful. They cooked 3 meals a day for us. We wrote in the morning, we made art in the afternoon, and every day before breakfast, we took a silent hike, either in the forest or down into the valleys. So it was the perfect setup to really dig in and get creative. And I'm really grateful to having had the chance to do it.
Well, what was the takeaway? What do you think you learned from that experience?
Well, I learned that it's important to write badly, and then you can go back and edit it and fix it, but just keep that pencil flowing. I'm a person who writes, and this was part of our workshop too, to write freehand, not to be composing on the computer. It's too tempting, to try to edit yourself as you're going along on the computer. And this is a lesson that I had learned many years ago when I took a writing class here in LA with Terry Wolverton. And I was in her women's writing group for many, many years. And I've since recently gone back to working with Terry, and she's just a total inspiration herself. So I'm in the groove now. I wrote this morning. It reminded me of another time. I told a story to my niece about the time Wendy and I arrived in Milan on the train, and we had a date to meet these friends of ours at a nightclub. And we couldn't find a place to stay. So, heck, we just went to the nightclub, and we made friends with some darling little gay boys who were there. And they tried to help us find a place to stay. But it was the International Design Fair in Milan, and we had arrived in town with no reservation. So we ended up spending the night in the Milan train station at the far end from the waiting room because that was packed. And during the night, we could hear someone snoring all the way through the train station. It was built during the Mussolini era, so it had enormous high walls. It was made of marble. And I'm telling you, the best espresso I ever had in my life was when that coffee bar opened the next morning. And that day, we found a place to stay.
Oh, I mean, that's a great story. I imagine your book is going to be filled with stories like that.
I plan for it to be because I have so many.
Exactly. So your process now is to actually write longhand. And
Yes,
then how do you get it? I mean, do you have a set time? Do you write at home? Do you go to a coffee shop? Where do you
I
write?
do write at home, but recently, especially since it's so hot and since there's so many distractions, I'm going to start going to my local branch library because I can sit quietly by myself without my phone or anything and just do some writing there. As you know, it just requires the habit of writing and writing and writing,
So
which
how
is
does it go from the written word on
uh,
the yellow pad to
to
being into the computer?
in print. Well, this is something that Julie Logan taught me. I will record my voice reading what I've written, and then it can be transcribed into print. And then, yeah.
Do you use Dragon Naturally Speaking for that or Dragon for Mac?
Oh, what a great idea because I have Dragon for Mac on, on my computer.
Well, I'm
And
here to inspire if I
hey,
can.
listen, you're my guru now.
So do you when you focus on writing and to help distractions, are you using any techniques like a Pomodoro technique or anything like that?
I don't know what that is.
So it's writing, and it's not writing. It's just doing any task for 20 minutes at a time. When you finish it, you finished a Pomodoro, and then you're allowed to take like a 5 minute break, and then we do it
Ah,
again, and it just keeps you on track.
Pomodoro, like the tomato?
Exactly. As a matter of fact,
Oh,
the software, if you're going to be doing it for your iPhone, is got Big Tomato on the. So it's exactly
I
like the
love
tomato.
that. Thank you for that tip.
Well, yeah, I'm on a roll now, huh?
You are.
So,
What's your book about, Craig?
oh, my book is. I have two books out right now. I'm working on the third book. It's a series of books. It's about a young guy who wants to be a great chef and always seems to get in trouble and always works with his friends to get out of trouble. Kind of a Scooby Gang kind
Oh,
of
this
thing.
sounds great.
So, when you are done with this,
Uh-huh.
how are you going to publish it?
I don't know for sure, but I have some leads with people I know who also have already published, and I am going to be asking for help and talking about it in my newsletters and in my blogs and on my website. So I'm planning, my intention is to build interest as I go along.
So, are you looking
Maybe I'll
to
publish, some of the chapters as I'm writing them.
probably a great idea to build
Uh-huh.
interest?
Yeah,
Uh, do you have a Facebook page?
I do.
Okay, so that's a perfect ground for that. Do you are you going to when you get ready to publish, are you looking at traditional publishing and trying to get yourself an agent and get yourself a publishing deal with, one of the big five or a subsidiary of the big five, or are you
Well,
looking?
perhaps that's been suggested to me as a good way to go. So, of course, I'm not near that yet, but in my preparation and my planning for the next year or year and a half or so, that definitely is going to be built in.
Okay, and then my
Got
last.
any suggestions there, Craig?
Oh, I got lots of suggestions. I can.
We'll have to talk more about that.
Of course, I'm more than happy to. Uh, the last thing I wanted to discuss was our last week's guest on the Writer's Mind was
Oh,
Kimberly
Kim.
O'Hara,
Uh-huh.
and so she had a very interesting interview. And I understand you're working with her.
Yes,
And I
I've taken three workshops with Kim, and I do have the intention to start working more intensively with her because she provides the service of working with people to create a book from start to finish. So that's really interesting to me, and I'm working out when to start and how to pay for it.
well, that old pesky little money thing.
Yeah, that thing.
So, but in the you have you had a good experience with her in the three
Oh,
classes
I
that you've
love
taken?
her. Yeah. Her workshops are full of inspirations and prompts for writing interesting things. And then her critique process is very, very smart and kind and emphasizes things, ways you can go, and also what you're strong in. So it's a way of taking in how to get better without getting hurt.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. So, I always ask this as my last question, and that is,
Okay.
was there a question you wanted me to ask that I didn't ask?
Um. Oh, how did I get the name of my company? Take My Mother, Please.
Okay, that's perfect.
Okay. Well, as I told you, when I led the tour for Lily Tomlin to the Berlin Film Festival, I uh, came back. Wendy said, "You should market this." And then it just came to me that if I named it Take My Mother, Please, of course, I'm kind of echoing the famous line from the comedian Henny Youngman. He used to start his stand up routines by saying, "Take my wife, please." So I thought "Take My Mother, Please" was a funny way to communicate what I'm what I'm up to. And the tagline is, "or any other VIP." So I figured if I could bring a smile to people's faces just from the get go, that would be a good place to start. And in my early days, often my panic-stricken friends would be having their mothers come to visit, so it seemed to make sense to kind of tweak that idea. Take my mother, please, or any other VIP, and that way people would know that I'm somebody fun and somebody they can trust. If you can trust me with your mother, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do people get in touch with you if they want a tour?
Well, they can contact me through my website, takemymotherplease.com, or there's a short version, takemymom.com. And they can talk to people who have gone on tours with me. Travel agents are really good referrals for me because they often have people coming to town or on their way someplace else who would like to see more of LA. So, word of mouth, website, travel agents,
Email?
and just look around and see what you're curious about, and I'm your gal.
Do you have an email you'd like to give out?
Sure. Take my mom at AOL.com.
There you go. Well, again, this has been a wonderful time talking with you. Thank you for
Thank
joining the
you.
Writer's Mind. And this was a great interview. Thanks again.
Craig, thank you. Appreciate it.